thank you for the opportunity to be here as well as to address all of you. What we're going to talk about, or at least whatever we've talked about, is while they were always been driven by a constraint-driven ecosystem, we are definitely moving into an age where we actually are going to try and see if we can actually be the pace setters rather than constraints. Now, almost every time the business heads say, we are not able to respond to the market because IT is slow, because tech is slow, because there is technical debt to be done. At this point in time, because of the power of AI, what we will be able to do is actually set the pace and actually set the innovation agenda for the firm. But what we are not going to talk about today is not about how businesses need to respond to the market. We're going to go perhaps a little more deeper, and it's my humble attempt to do so, using some live case studies of what we have learned from the teams who are actually delivering value, especially in the last 2 to 3 years, using the power of AI, how they have moved from being constraint-driven ecosystem to actually setting the pace. So one of the examples which I wanted to talk about is legacy code to new code. It's a very simple problem. Everybody faces it. And what has happened is, this team, they said that they looked at all the legacy code which was on the mainframe, and they said, how are we going to approach this problem? They did not have any mainframe specialists, but I, of course, called out that I was a COBOL programmer, so I can join your team. But they said, no, we need hundreds of them to be able to do this in terms of reverse engineering, so we will not take that approach. Instead, they used the power of AI. They actually moved the legacy code into spec, and from spec into new code, all through the power of AI. They did not look at it as a constraint-driven ecosystem. They looked at it as how are we going to set the pace in terms of what is the opportunity this gives us to unlock the huge potential which is there in all these ecosystems which are having technical debt. And they're not doing it at a very slow pace. They're doing it really, really quickly. And when I say about really quickly, I talk about instant gratification as well. The amount of pride and satisfaction they're taking through really moving at this pace is similar to my cooking. Not to comment about the quality of it, but at least the gratification it gives me. I cook, I eat, and I'm satisfied. All within 1.5 to 2 hours, right? Similarly, they're trying to make this pace of movement, of migration, also in a similar way. And they're not looking at it as saying that we are constrained with this ecosystem, we are constrained with this technology, we are constrained with roles of having mainframe specialists, of having domain experts, of having somebody sitting on the other side of the fence to actually tell us what to do. They're looking at it in a much more different manner. And how are they actually doing this? They're not doing this by traditional thinking. And all this, whatever I'm telling you, is from the team. It's not from a book, nor from a PPT. This is our experience of the last 2 to 3 years. I'll use an analogy of sports. I play sports. So here you see a football field. In a football field, how are the teams made, right? You have strikers, you have midfielders, you have defenders, you have goalkeepers, right? Each has a role, of course, with some adjacent responsibilities as well, right? Now, most of our pods or squads have this kind of structure at this point in time. Some of us try to move to a different perspective of multi-skilling, being adversant with multiple technologies and languages, etc., to actually move the needle. Now look at the second one, which is about chess. Chess is there is only one person. This one person needs to strategize, needs to defend, needs to attack, and needs to win. That one person is thinking on all fronts and trying to play the game in order to win. And it is no longer about siloed roles and multiple people playing different roles. It is about one person holistically thinking about how am I going to solve the problem. And this is going to actually go on to the next stage, which I'm not very sure how many of you know about freestyle chess. Mr. Carlson will be very disappointed if a lot of people don't know about freestyle chess. Freestyle chess, you are not only going to change the game in terms of one person thinking about it, you're actually going to allow them to keep the pieces the way they want to at the start of the game. It's irony that he tried to create this to actually reduce the influence of AI models of pre-learning and preparation which people do. So it is about moving from skilled to multi-skilled, from multi-skilled to being polyglots, and from polyglots to actually being problem solvers. So the team who actually did this in terms of moving the code and making it refreshed were actually looking at it from that perspective, how am I going to solve this problem holistically, and not just look at it as a lift and shift of the code. Now, the most important perspective, and the last perspective, is the fact that there is genuine fear among all of us and in our teams. HFS research last week published that over 50% of our employees actually fear the adoption of AI because they don't know what to do with it, or they don't know what it is going to do to them. Right? They came up with an acronym called FOBO, fear of becoming obsolete. So full credit to HFS, I'm not plagiarizing. Right? So they came up with this aspect of it. What are we as leaders in this room going to do about how are we going to get rid of this fear? And a lot of people before me have already talked about how are we going to help all our teams and all our colleagues to actually come out of that fear. That fear is trying to use the analogy of energy is not equal to value. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to give you any equations here. So please be rest assured. Energy in this universe is finite. Somebody needs to absolutely lose it for somebody to gain it. Value, on the other hand, and a lot of people before me have already spoken about it, value is limitless. We are not going to be replaced by technology when it has not been able to replace us for 30 years. We will not be working only for automation of manual tasks. We will be working for actually unlocking much more value than what we have always been. So the focus has always to be about how are we going to generate more and more value. A program team 3 months ago mentioned that we have been successfully able to reduce the execution time of a migration from 18 months to 8 months using GenAI. But they didn't talk about it saying that they didn't talk about it in that parlance. The narrative was very different. The narrative was we were able to ensure that the business offerings and the business strategy to the end consumer were launched much quicker for higher revenue generation. Because that is what is called unlocking value. The people were not worried about the fact that if we finish this in 8 months, after 8 months, what will we do? That was not the question in their minds. And they will be able to think about this only if we in this room and our extended team will be able to provide them that safety net and provide them that emphasis that it is about unlocking value and it is not about just reducing manual work. So it says 3 minutes, but anyway. And this value generation, this unlocking of value, will help them actually move from a handshake to embrace. A handshake is they will use AI as a tool. They'll use AI as Jira. They'll use AI as an automation script. Or an embrace is they will use the problem-solving mentality so that every person in your organization becomes a problem solver with the power of AI. And to use the analogy which Sanjay mentioned, that every person has that iron suit in order to be able to multiply the value output. So I'll actually leave this at the last. The last but not least is moving from constrained to setting the pace, moving from fixed roles to problem solvers, and last but not the least, reducing fear and providing exponential value. Those are the three key things we have learned through these case studies, through our team. We've been listening to them all through and their experiences and their scars, and that is what I would like to leave you with. Thank you so much for your patience.